This is the Spirit and Wellness Show. News and information from a higher perspective. With your host, Harry Wilkinson.
Yes, this is your host, Harry Wilkinson, and welcome once again to the Spirit and Wellness Show. I hope it's once again, or for those of you who are new to the program, welcome to you as well. And this is the show where we take a look at the days and weeks, events, happenings in the world of politics, happenings in the world of entertainment, technology, the environment, all of the things that we interact with or hear about in the course of our week. And we take a look at it from a higher perspective. You know, we live in a time with 24-hour news cycles and instant communications where, we feel almost bombarded by someone's idea of a news story, someone's reporting of a situation going on. We know more about what's going on around the world almost instantaneously than we ever did before, and I think that has an effect on people. I think it does. It has an effect, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but it has an effect of making people feel like it's all too much, like the world is falling apart. And believe me, the world has been going on like this for quite some time. In fact, the world has been going on under much more difficult circumstances, at least in the sense of human behavior and politics, than it is now. There are some things to be concerned about, and we're going to talk about those too, but this feeling of anxiety, this feeling of impending doom that I notice is almost all pervasive these days. We're seeing it in the run-up to our elections here in the United States. But we are also seeing it in the movies and TV programs we choose to watch. I find myself watching them. A gentleman from, I believe it was Richard Roper, who's a film critic, happened to talk about the fact that 70 to 80% of the films that were released in the previous year had something to do with the end of the world coming, or saving the world, or being unable to save the world. Very apocalyptic kind of phase we are in right now. So to kind of counter those effects, it's healthful, I think, to take a step back from the news programs of the day and to look at them from a higher perspective, to look at them from the point of view, and this is, to me, a spiritual perspective, not a religious one, but a spiritual one, that we are creating it all. But we're creating it not from the everyday consciousness level that we are aware of as we go through our day. We are creating it on a higher level, metaphysical level, if you will. And we are creating it to give ourselves opportunities to experience things and to remind ourselves who and what we really are. In a way, as I've said often on the program, in a way, what we're creating are kind of holographic images that we interact with full belief. In other words, they're not real, but we believe that they are, at least for the moment when we're in them. And in the course of our interacting with them, we get to experience all of these things that are basically illusions. They're not real. But we experience them because we look for ways to expand and connect to our oneness. So the truth of anything, the truth of it all, is that we are oneness, and we are forever. And the belief in separation, the belief in that we are our physical bodies, and that when they perish, that we perish, all of these things are the illusions that we cling to, because we are creating this holographic movie, if you will, that we apparently find very entertaining because we continue to do it. So that's what my perspective on the news is, and what I try to do on this show. This episode is called State of Separation, so that's exactly what we're talking about. And we're going to talk about, since the election is just a few days away, how this state of separation, or this belief of separation, shows itself in our politics, and why that happens. And we continue to scare ourselves with threats of Ebola and all of these things. And these are also ways of distracting us from who and what we really are. And the challenges that they present, we rise to them all the time. It's a story that we tell. It's the story of us. So on we go on today's program. As I said, we're going to talk about the election. We're going to talk about a news story that, while we were busy scaring ourselves silly about Ebola, kind of slipped under the cracks, and it's very interesting, and we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about the latest on climate change, the climate change story that we're telling and we're creating. Very interesting. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to get to our hero of consciousness that we did not get to last week, Mr. Russell Targ, and remote viewing. So we're going to talk about what remote viewing actually is. It's a little bit about its history and about basically its founder, Mr. Russell Targ. So that's all coming up. But yes, let's talk about today the election. Now, November 4th. Well, actually, this year it's the first Tuesday, so I believe that is actually November the 4th. Yep, November the 4th is Tuesday. Is our election day here in this country. And the big buzz about it all is that we keep hearing that we're polarized, that we're kind of split down the middle by ideology. There's this big contest that will the Republicans take the Senate, and so that they'll be running the House and the Senate, which looks like it may be a possibility right now. And what will that mean for the future of the country, so forth and so on. A lot of the discussion centers around why it seems we can't find agreement on simple issues that in previous times we could find agreement on. We had another school shooting last week. Didn't get an awful lot of attention. And once again, we are drawn to the understanding that something needs to be done, but cannot find agreement politically to create laws to limit the access to weapons that might cause these sorts of things, or even to have restrictions that would protect, innocent children from coming into contact with weapons that they don't really need to know how to use right now. Those sorts of things. And so there's a lot of questioning about, well, what does my vote mean? Or does it mean anything? And there's a lot of talk about, people not even showing up to vote because they don't think that their vote counts anymore. So all of these things are high up in our thoughts right now. I believe that, and they tell you, you should vote because your vote means a lot and your vote can change things. Well, maybe and maybe not. We have a very complicated electoral system in which our votes may or may not even be weighed with the importance that they deserve. The Electoral College is how our voting system works. So each state gets a certain number of votes. And when we vote in the voting booth, we're voting for a particular thing, and whichever wins, then that is where the state goes on a particular topic. Or anyway, it's very complicated. We don't have a direct voting system, so it's kind of hard for people to feel very empowered by it. But what I would say is we still do seem to have a representative democracy. In other words, what the politicians are fighting about are generally things that we've put them there to fight about. We're creating it. And so it's a perfect reflection of our own belief in separation. It's a perfect reflection of that. And it's a great opportunity to go into that and learn from it and understand how this false belief in separation creates turmoil. Also another illusion, but creates the sense of despair. So, when you are weighed down by your beliefs, be they political beliefs, be they even religious dogma or anything of that kind, then that prevents you from experiencing many things, including oneness. We create beliefs to create a sense of separation. The idea that we are, that person believes that thing, and I believe something different, so they are the other, and I am better than they are because I believe rightly, and they believe wrongly. And I can't stand them because they believe wrongly. And if only they would believe rightly, everything would be lovely. Everything would be fine. That's what we do because we believe that we are separate from these people. We don't get them. We don't get a sense of connectedness to them. And that stems from a belief that we are separate from divine mind or God, if you don't find that term objectionable. And so all of this plays out in the ring of politics as this illusory kind of stalemate, this kind of this kind of belief that we are separated by our ideology. And the polls are showing, people lining up on one side of an issue or other, and things that might normally not be political, like the Ebola crisis, are all of a sudden highly politicized. So you have somebody like a Governor Chris Christie who decides that he's going to, create his own approach to, confining those that may or may have been exposed to Ebola by quarantining anybody who comes back immediately for 21 days. So you have, and these things are being done in a sense of political. In a way, it's political grandstanding. From what I understand, I guess the conservatives want instant confinement for anybody who comes back from that region of Africa. And I guess the Democrats or the liberals find that is, overplaying it, that it's a violation of civil liberties, so forth and so on. And I'm talking particularly about this case with the nurse who flew into New Jersey and was immediately quarantined and not allowed to go back to her home in Maine, and put in a tent with, I guess some sort of a porta potty, but nothing much else, and was kept that way. And it was stated by Mr. Christie that this nurse was ill, and she showed no symptoms. She had no symptoms. She wasn't ill. And she was following the protocol that is set down from the CDC, which is that, you self-monitor. And if you begin to show symptoms, then you immediately, get yourself to a hospital and get yourself, in a safe place where you don't infect others. That's the protocol. You don't grab somebody off a plane the minute they touch down from West Africa and throw them into a quarantine situation. It's not necessary, it's heavy-handed, but it's this panic that's going on, this fear. But now it's being politicized. So the idea of separation, as I said, is what we're dealing with here, and what we're dealing with in politics, and it's painful. I understand that it's painful on this level, but we are creating it to learn this lesson. We are creating it to learn this lesson of how important we are as one, and to find our way back to that. And believe it or not, that's where we're headed. And while everybody was screaming about Ebola, there was a news story that came out that didn't get a lot of coverage. And I'll tell you what the difference is here. I'm looking at two articles on this, online articles. One is from the Washington Post in the United States, and the other is from BBC News in the UK. Now, on the BBC News website, this article is the leading article. It is the top story. In the Washington Post, this is not so much. But okay, let me tell you what it is. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, has met again, and they've met for many years. And they're studying the effects of climate change, and what they've come to now, in this current report that they've created, is that the Earth is locked on an irreversible course of climatic disruption from the buildup of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and that the impacts will only worsen unless nations agree to dramatic cuts in pollution. So this is what we are creating here, and we see it. It's clearly happening. Rising sea levels, extreme weather. We've all seen it happening. Melting polar ice from soaring levels of carbon dioxide. That's set to continue. We can't change that now. The only thing we can do is lessen the severity of it by cutting back on the emission of the greenhouse gases. And again, this is another story of separation. We have this very politically charged debate where the conservatives are saying that this is all bunk, these scientists don't know what they're talking about, and then you have other people. And I'm not going to say that all conservatives believe that, because that's not true. It's actually just a small minority, but a very vocal minority of people that want to dismiss this as not being the truth. And what we will discover is that our oneness is what will get us out of this. As a Wesleyan University professor said in reaction to this report, it's not too late, but the longer you wait, the more expensive it gets. Damage to the Earth's ecosystems is irreversible to the extent to which we have committed ourselves, but we will commit ourselves to higher and higher damages and impacts if the world's leaders fail to act. So, as I said, these IPCC reports have been coming out since the 1990s and have given us a very clear picture of what is happening. The warming trend seen on the land and in the ocean since the 1950s is, according to this report, unequivocal, and that it is extremely likely, which, according to the report, means a 95% or greater probability that humans are the main cause. So, those that want to argue for that 5% option that maybe it's not, they're well in their rights to do so. But what we need to do is come together. What we need to do is understand that there is a problem and find the vision. Find the vision of find the story of salvation for this that we will want to create. So, according to the report, a large fraction of anthropogenic climate change is irreversible on a multi-century to millennial time scale, the report said. Sea level rise, for example, will continue for many centuries beyond 2100 because of ice sheet melting that's already underway, and other causes. And no one really knows exactly what the impact of these things is going to be, because so far we've seen the profound impacts on natural and human systems in the rising temperatures and so forth. We had a report recently that 40 to 50% of living creatures, animals, have gone extinct in the past 60 years. Part and parcel of this, I believe. So, it's all a very scary story, right? Something that maybe deserves a bit more attention than the Ebola scare in this country right now. But in any case, it's a daunting task ahead of us. But as the chairman, Rajendra Pachauri, says, he humbly suggests that policymakers avoid becoming being overcome by the seeming hopelessness of addressing climate change. It's not hopeless, but it won't be easy. And lastly, our Secretary of State, John F. Kerry, said that we can't prevent a large-scale disaster if we don't heed this kind of hard science. The longer we're stuck in a debate over ideology and politics, the more the costs of inaction grow and grow, and those who choose to ignore or dispute the science so clearly laid out in this report do so at great risk for all of us and for our grandkids. So as I said, there's a difference in the reporting of these things. For instance, in Europe, in the UK, this is the front page story, and it's not on the Washington Post. But what they're suggesting is that the unrestricted use of fossil fuels should be phased out entirely by 2100. So 2100, that's about 80 or so years from now that we have to do this. I won't be around. Many of you won't be around, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that if we feel so moved to partake in this story, that we do what we need to do. Okay, we're running low on time, so I want to talk about Mr. Russell Targ. Russell Targ is a scientist, a physicist, and a parapsychologist, and he is known for his work on remote viewing. So what is remote viewing? Remote viewing is the ability to seek out impressions, targets, things through intuitive abilities, or ESP, or the sensing mind, from far away. A remote viewer can get information about an object, an event, a person, or a place that's hidden from physical view or very far away. And the practice of this was pioneered by Russell Targ and his partner, Mr. Harold Putoff, also a parapsychologist from the Stanford Research Institute. Okay, these guys are Stanford guys. They're not, they didn't get their degree, from a community college. They're very smart scientists. And their history, they began studying this in the 1970s, and their first or most famous remote viewer is a gentleman by the name of Ingo Swann, who was very successful at this, very good at this, so much so that he caught the attention of the CIA. That asked him to help them militarily to sort of be a spy. And there were many experiments. We'll go into some of them next time. But I just want to read to you, because there's a Wikipedia article about Mr. Targ. And the rap on him is that he is that remote viewing is a pseudoscience, and that his research is not replicable and not valid. And this is a meme that I've talked about on the show all the time, that mainstream scientists use to sort of discount this kind of thing, despite the fact that the results are very scientifically driven and can be replicated. The expectation of huge amounts of data in this area, which is what is demanded by mainstream science in order for them to take it seriously, is what gives them the idea that this isn't valid. But anyway, Mr. Targ, who's in his 80s now, wanted to reply to Wikipedia and their claim that remote viewing is pseudoscience. So his response is, remote viewing is not pseudoscience. Please immediately drop that inaccurate and insulting term that you have scattered throughout my Wikipedia bio page. According to Wikipedia's definition, pseudoscience is a claim, belief, or practice which is presented as science but does not adhere to a valid scientific method, lacks supporting evidence or plausibility, cannot be reliably tested, or otherwise lacks scientific status. The term pseudoscience is often considered inherently pejorative because it suggests something is being inaccurately or even deceptively portrayed as science. So he goes on to explain that there are a number of reasons that the editors at Wikipedia should not characterize remote viewing as pseudoscience, when it is not characterized that way by the informed scientific community. One of the first things he mentions is that in order to publish our findings in the 1976 proceedings of the IEEE, that was their experiment, we had to meet with Robert W. Luckey, managing editor, and his board. The editor proposed to us that we show him how to conduct a remote viewing experiment. If it was successful, he would publish our paper. The editor was also head of the electro-optics at Bell Telephone Labs. We gave a talk at his lab. He chose some engineers to be the the psychics for our 5 days. Each day, he hid himself at a randomly chosen location in the nearby town. After the agreed-upon 5 trials, the editor read the 5 transcripts and successfully matched each of the 5 correctly to his hiding place. This was significant at .008, a 1 in 5 factorial. That is considered scientifically significant. As a result, he published our paper on information transmission over kilometer distances. In our 23-year program for the government at SRI, we had to carry out demonstration of ability tasks for the director of CIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, NASA, and the commanding general of the Army Intelligence Command. For the CIA, we were able to accurately describe and draw a giant gantry crane rolling on 8 wheels over a large building and draw the 60-foot gauze slices of a sphere under construction in northern Russia. The sphere was entirely accurate, although its existence was unknown at that time. The description was so accurate that it became the subject of a congressional hearing on the House Committee on Intelligence because they were afraid of a security leak. The leak was found, and we were told to press on. Remote viewing is easily replicated and demonstrated all over the world. It has been the subject of several PhD dissertations in the U.S. and abroad. Princeton University had a 25-year program investigating remote viewing, with more than 450 trials. Professor Robert John also published a lengthy and highly significant experimental investigation on remote viewing in the 1982. So there's more, and we're going to get to it next week, I promise. But for now, we've got to go. Do go out and vote if you are so moved. And don't if you're not. You know, it's all about doing what is available to you to do. Have a great week.